right. Hey guys, welcome to the Knowledge Gap podcast. This is the very first podcast that is now actually under the branding of Knowledge Gap. It used to be On Side of Truth, so if you've been listening to that and you haven't heard the announcement yet, I'm just changing the names for branding, marketing purposes. Everything that I seem to talk about on these podcasts is really focused on the knowledge gap between graduating high school and college and what you really need to know to get started in life in your 20s. And that's really what we're going to be focusing on, is making sure your 20s are really strong, financially, spiritually, emotionally, things like that. So it's really just that period where you should start listening to this when you're a teenager in high school, throughout college, in your 20s. And that's what it's all about, is just helping you fill that knowledge gap. Because what the knowledge gap is basically what you know, the difference between what you know and what you need to know in order to reach whatever your goals are. So we're going to be trying to fill that in a way that's helpful in a lot of different ways. For example, we're starting a real estate series soon where we're going to teach you how to buy your first home and why it's important to buy real estate and buy a home versus always renting, and what the different situations are. Going to be talking a lot about perseverance and your mindset and coaching your mind, because that's one thing that there's a huge knowledge gap on, is that you're not taught self-talk or how to develop a really strong attitude or develop a purpose, right? So that's like a professional and life thing, is figuring out your purpose, why you do what you do. And so that's what we're going to try to fill for you guys, is that knowledge gap, give you ideas, things to think about, little things where you can start getting some curiosity to fill that for yourself as well. So appreciate you guys for being really understanding through the change. You got to change all the social medias, make a lot of posts and things like that going forward. So give it a week or so, maybe two, and everything should be back to running on all cylinders, where we are the knowledge gap. That's really normal. So for podcast episodes going forward, the outline is going to be something like this. Going to give you an intro of what we're going to be talking about, that day. So for today, for example, we're going to be talking about a rule for life, or a rule for thumb, where it is a good idea to learn things that others are not willing to learn. Learn skills that are rare and scarce, and you will be paid for them your whole life. So we're going to be talking about that. In each episode, before we talk about our added value segment, that's what that's going to be called, we're going to do a self-destructive trend of the week, which is actually going to be one of my favorite things, is just looking at like TikToks and social media and like what's the trend, and looking for ones that you really ought to avoid that are popularized, because a lot of things can be popularized and it's like a soundboard. When one person's being really negative, we used to call it puking. Sometimes people can puke on each other, and if you're sort of in the same age range, same experience level, if you're upset about something, the other person's just going to puke back what you said. They're going to be upset about it too, and then everybody's got a bunch of puke on them and everybody feels terrible. And you want to look for people that have gone through where you've gone before, who are a good influence, good mentor, someone who basically has, again, stepped in your shoes of what you're trying to do. They've got a bucket. You can puke in their bucket and they're going to be fine with that puke, right? It's not going to go all over your friend. It's not going to go over you. You're not going to get puked back on, because the negative soundboard can be really, really damaging to your personal belief, your success, and of course your attitude. Your attitude is pretty much everything, right? So, but yeah, we're going to go over quiet quitting in that segment, and then we're going to do our added value segment and do a sign off and call to action and stuff like that. So that's what we're doing. So here we go. Let's do it. Okay. So what we're talking about is this idea of quiet quitting. If you have not heard of silent or quiet quitting, it's this idea that you should never go above and beyond in your workplace, because then that means work is completely taken over your life and there's no balance. Okay. So people are doing this probably because the leadership of their job is not appreciating them very much, one. But two, it's also that person's fault for not having a purpose for their job or why they're doing what they're doing. A lot of people really avoid that question for some reason. They kind of just do stuff to make money or whatever. It's because everyone else is doing it. So I'll kind of explain the difference here. But for leadership, the number one reason people quit their job is because they don't feel appreciated. And I did watch a TikTok where this lady was like, I'm going to work the extra hours and get the same recognition as everyone else. That is nonsense. If you are a leader, you need to be recognizing the people doing the extra work if you want to incentivize engaged behavior. So that's so important for you to develop right now. If you ever want to be a leader, run a business, you'll be a doctor, whatever, you need to incentivize and recognize people for doing extra work. That's how you're going to help people learn skills and, develop themselves and help the whole organization run better, is when people do the extra mile instead of feeling like dejected all the time, like you don't care. Okay. So that's one thing. Leaders need to step up and do stuff like that. Now for the person, you've got to decide what kind of job you're doing, right? Most people hate their jobs. They're doing it because they're afraid to not have money. I need to do this to make money, and then they're not doing something purpose driven. And so part of this podcast is to help you become more purpose driven driven, and I really want you to love what you're doing. And you got to figure these things out in your teens and 20s, And so if you're doing a job to learn skills, that's your purpose. You are trying to go above and beyond to learn the skills that you need from that job in order to apply them somewhere else. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the author Robert Kiyosaki talks about going to the military for skills, going into sales for skills, and then he would, stay there until he developed the skills, or one of the best people, and then he would utilize those skills and what he wanted to do running his own businesses later on, right? So if you're doing a job for skills, get excited about those skills. Don't dread the job. Be excited and passionate while you're there. Go the extra mile. Be literally the person who's doing all the extra stuff. In life, you're gonna end up being balanced out. When you're early, before you have a family, before you're married, you're gonna have a lot of free time. Most people waste that. So if you're doing it in a place that's developing skills or character in a way that's preparing you for your future, where you are married and have kids and you're gonna have less time, but by that point, because of those skills, you are paid more for putting in less time because you're a leader, a manager, you've invented something. That's really what you want to do. You want to go really hard at the beginning and then maybe have some more time for family, right? As you're going and you're growing up and things like that. Don't become a victim to the quiet quitting, don't fall for that trap of, whatever. It's just like, hey, find a leader who cares about you, who is going to speak life and recognize you. That's a culture when you're looking at a job. Find a job that has that culture that you like. As a leader, you need to recognize some people at your job and make sure you're doing that for them, but always go the extra mile. People like to invest in people who go the extra mile, who have a purpose and a passion for life. And so if you don't know your purpose and passion, just keep listening to this podcast. We're going to have a lot of talks about that and interview a lot of cool people on why they do what they do. So, all right, now let's get to our added value segment. Okay, so today we're talking about a rule for life. Number one, learn things that others aren't willing to learn. So I'll just give you a little story on this and explain why it's so valuable. But just think about it for 2 seconds before we get into this story. Someone who has skills that no one else has, let's say a photographer for a wedding. Why do they get paid so much? Because their skill is hard to replicate, for example, right? You've got to do all these editing and things like that. Or really like a consulting firm can charge so much because they have a perfected process that other people can't do, right? So if you're learning things that others don't know how to do, you will be paid for them. It's called solutions. It's how entrepreneurs figure out products. It's like the number one thing that the product has to be able to do is solve a problem that others can't solve themselves. And if it's a problem, it saves them time or something like that, people will buy it if there's value there, right? So you need to be learning skills, learning things, developing things that other people don't have, and they'll pay you for it. So for example, in college, I was a accounting major at the University of Tennessee, and it was the hardest business major. And don't make fun of me here. If you're a medicine, medical law, any of the engineer majors that are really, really difficult, those are difficult, and there's a huge learning curve there. That's why they're paid a lot more than someone who does, a really easy sociology major, which no offense to sociology majors, but that's just not hard. It's just not very difficult. You're reading, basically. Learning the accounting skill was hard for a lot of business people. They would drop out of class. Like one of our classes was a weed out class. They were trying to make you fail. 33% of people would pass. And the accounting skill you use every day. If you know how to do accounting and tax, type law type stuff with your numbers, you can save 100, 200, 300 millions of dollars throughout your lifetime because of how much tax savings, because you can plan and do certain activities that are incentivized by the government to where you pay less taxes. Wow, right? That's so valuable. And people on the short term would get rid of that. And that's where that silent quitting kind of rolls right into today's added value content is that, oh my gosh, do the extra mile, learn the harder thing and people will pay you for it. There's a reason not everyone, why you get paid more. It's because not everyone's willing to learn it because it's hard to learn. If you can learn it and you get those skills, you'll be set up a lot better than most people in life. People pay people to solve their problems for them because they don't want to. They don't want to go through the hassle. It takes years sometimes to build some skills that other people aren't willing to put in or don't have the time for. So you're going to literally never be hungry if you have skills that others don't have. And again, the thing in college, the thing in high school is to be too cool, where you're supposed to be like mediocre at things. Like, don't be mediocre, be the best at stuff. Learn as much as you can, prepare yourself for the future. Okay, cool. So here's a little exercise for you. Stop whatever you're doing. Just take self-audit. It's just basically a self-check. It's a fancy accounting word. And just think about the things that you avoid on a daily basis. What do you avoid? What's good for you that you avoid? And just think of one of them. And all I want you to do is challenge yourself to do that today. That one thing that you maybe avoid that's good for you. Maybe it's getting out of bed early. Maybe it's like going to bed early. Maybe it's turning your phone off, something like that. And I just want you to just do that one healthy thing that you're avoiding, right? Learn that thing that you're avoiding, be ahead on studying, whatever it is, and see how that goes and see how you feel. While you're young and you have time and freedom to develop yourself, I really encourage you to invest as much as you can now, because that investment's in exponential growth over the rest of your life. And again, avoid silent quitting, learn things that others aren't willing to learn, and you will never be hungry the rest of your life. So guys, thanks so much for listening to the podcast and watch the video on YouTube. If you're on the YouTube channel and aren't subscribed to the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. If you're on the podcast, not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go over there and subscribe to that. I really invite you guys to go on the journey with me to helping young people reach their goals in life in that gap of knowledge between what you're learning in high school and college and what you need to reach your goals in life. So thank you guys so much. Soon we're going to be at 1,000 subscribers. Super excited about it. Appreciate you guys.